Frogman Friday.
Yeah, boy.
All right, folks, this is a big one today. This is a very special opportunity, very rare for somebody who has a show outside of the military to have somebody who's currently active in the military. And at that, we have SEAC David Isom, the Senior Enlisted Advisor to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. SEAC David Isom is the 6th Senior Enlisted Advisor to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the most senior enlisted service member by position in the U.S. Armed Forces, serving as the Principal Enlisted Advisor to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Prior to becoming SEAC on June 20th, 2025, he served as the Command Senior Enlisted Leader for U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, Command Senior Enlisted Leader, Special Operations Command Pacific, Command Senior Enlisted Leader, Special Operations Command North, Command Master Chief, Naval Special Warfare Group 10, and Command Master Chief, Special Reconnaissance Team 2. His other assignments include Naval Special Warfare Development Group, Joint Special Operations Command, JSOC, Tactical Development and Evaluation Squadron 1, and SEAL Team 1. SEAC Isom enlisted in the U.S. Navy in 1987 and attended basic training at Recruit Training Command in Great Lakes, Illinois. Upon completion of training, he reported to the USS Mauna Kea, AE-22. He was later assigned to the USS Mount Hood, AE-29, prior to being selected to attend Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL Training, BUDS. SEAC Isom's assignments have included a full range of duties in Sea, Air, and Land SEAL teams as Theater Special Operations Command and across joint environments. His combat and operational deployments include Operation Desert Shield, Operation Desert Storm, Operation Enduring Freedom, and Operation Iraqi Freedom, as well as deployments throughout the Pacific and Horn of Africa. Welcome to the show, brother.
Birdman. Hey, thanks for having me. I am filled with gratitude and just really honored and grateful that you would have me on your show here. It is super cool. I think this is about your 100th episode, and you choosing me to be your 100th guest is awesome. So let me just start by saying thank you for having me. It's a great way to, I think, get the word out about what a SEAC is, because I know not everybody even knows. I know I never knew as a young service member. I was clueless, probably didn't even know what a MCPON was. So it's cool to be on your show, cool to see you. And I'll say as well, thanks for your service, for what you did in uniform and your continued service now, what you're doing here on this show. This is really awesome.
Thank you, brother. I was going to hydrate right after reading your bio because it's incredible. I love reading this bio. I've read it several times, and it's just amazing what you've accomplished over your career. And to your point of not knowing what a SEAC is, I mean, when you started in the military, there was not a SEAC. It didn't exist. So it's incredible that now you're the 6th and the first person in the Navy to actually be the SEAC. So I want to dig into this. And for the guests listening today, I wanted you to know that this is not just coming from what I want to know, but I reached out to the Brotherhood to ask questions saying, what do you want to hear? What do you know about SEAC? And so this is a combination of questions that have come from the Brotherhood of the SEAL teams, Green Berets, other special operations members, because we all wanted to shed some light on what SEAC David Isom is doing today and what this role is. And so without further ado, I want to kick it off with your childhood. You grew up as a surfer on the coast of North Carolina, and you were inspired by your father, a Korean War Army veteran. Can you share a story from your early life that sparked your decision to enlist in the Navy in 1987?
Yeah. I led a pretty just normal, uneventful, small town life for the bulk of my childhood. And I think growing up watching my dad, his commitment to service was a big influence on my decision to join the service. He was in the Army, Korean War veteran, but got out and became a civil engineer and spent the rest of his life working as a civil engineer with the Department of Transportation in North Carolina, where, late night calls, snowstorms, flooding, roads out. Anytime anything would come up, man, he was on the phone. He was up and out the door, going to check on the highways, checking on his people, making sure things were in place to help the public. And so he was a public servant in that role. And just watching his dedication and his commitment to the state of North Carolina for a really long time was, it set a pretty phenomenal example for me as his son, watching him do that. And my mom as well, just as a dedicated mother. And then she worked at our courthouse in the local small town where I was growing up, as a clerk there as well, sort of in that role of service to the community. And so I think that just rubbed off a lot on me and on all my siblings. And so when it came time to figure out life, when I went off to UNC Wilmington, and I was really just focused on surfing and hanging out at the beach, and just wasn't putting a full effort into school, I guess would be a gentle way to say it. I said, hey, I'm kind of wasting money here. I called my parents and said, I'm wasting your money. I'm wasting my time. Like, this is not what I need to be doing, and I need to change direction. And so I went home and lived with them for a summer and kind of thought through what could be next. And I met a couple of guys that were going in the Navy. And I grew up in the water, loved swimming, loved the ocean. And I thought, hey, that sounds pretty interesting. And military, I know my dad was in the military. An opportunity to gain a little bit of discipline, to grow up a little bit, seemed like a good idea because I knew I needed it. And it just gave me a moment to reflect and look inward and say, hey, what do you want to do? And the idea of doing something bigger than myself, having watched that life of service that my dad had all those years, had set the example, that was really appealing to me. And so I went down and met the recruiter and decided to join the Navy.
That's amazing. I mean, the start point that your father served in the Korean War, I mean, World War II, Korean War, these are our apex of people that served our nation, that are still around, that we have to take so much from. So understanding that you understood service right out of the gate, I get that. Back then in the 80s, the SEALs weren't popular. In fact, nobody knew about the SEALs. So how did you find your way to the SEALs?
Yeah, so I show up at boot camp, and they had a recruiting video, and it talked about the SEALs. And I said, hey, that's for me. Requires lots of swimming. I love the water. Shooting. I grew up hunting. This is awesome. This is exactly what I want. And of course, the video was awesome, right? It's awe-inspiring. And so I said, hey, I think I want to try that. And I was locked into a contract, a 6-year enlistment contract, where I had to serve 4 years in the conventional Navy as a machinist mate before I could apply to BUD/S. That was the requirement. And so I knocked out those 4 years in the fleet, which was great, by the way, because it taught me all about the Navy. And being a maritime power that we are, it was important that I understand how the Navy operates and why they do what they do, and to understand ships and how they work. I mean, it was a real education in what the Navy was all about. And it sort of mentally prepared me. It gave me a chance to grow up. Did get a little more discipline in my life, figured out that there was more to life than just having fun, although that's important.
For sure.
But yeah, so ended up submitting, an application on the first day that I was eligible. And I had a very supportive command master chief at that second ship that I was on, and he was all for it. And he was always in the gym working out, so he was an inspiration as well. And so, yeah, submitted an application, was selected to go, and off I went, off to BUD/S.
I'm surprised that it wasn't the Charlie Sheen that did it for you. So I've heard that. No, I'm kidding. So that's interesting that you had to do 6 years in the fleet, or 4 years in the fleet, before you could try out for BUD/S. Because obviously I went in 2002, so much different. There was actually a pipeline that you still tried out in boot camp, but it was a lot more of a, I know that I'm going in enlisted as an aviation ordnanceman, but I can still select to go to BUD/S while in boot camp and then get a contract. Walk us through the process of what it took to get to SEAL training in that time frame.
Yeah, so under that 6-year contract that I was under, the agreement had me getting some additional education and training in the very beginning. And so I entered the fleet as a E4. And so with that extra rank came the requirement for that extra time, right? And so did that. And from there, it was a fairly simple process. I just had to execute the service as required, the time in service, and then fill out an application, go take the physical test, get the medical test done, submit a package, and with the endorsement of our command. and it was all approved. I was coming up at the end of my PRD for my time on that ship, and so it was an easy, I think, it was an easy thing to accomplish. I feel like looking back, I mean, I was the rarity, which is probably very similar today. There weren't a lot of folks coming from the fleet at that time, and so there was a small number of us with a little bit of fleet time. But yeah, it was a fairly simple process once I had served the required time.
I feel like it would almost be more impactful though, because you have to wait so long to get to that. Whereas today you can go right into boot camp, into a special operations boot camp division, and you train there and then you ship right out to buds. And so having to have that goal out there that you have to continually chase and dream about and stay passionate about for 4 years to get there. I mean, that just seems like all the more, I don't know. I always like to say that if I were in those shoes and I had to wait 4 years to go to buds, I would crush buds and probably be the honor man because I wanted it so bad if it's that long. But that's amazing. That's really cool. Wow. Okay, so if you were to describe your role as SEAC to someone outside the military, how would you explain it, and why does what you do matter to the military?
Yeah, it's a difficult role to explain to those outside the military, and frankly, not everyone inside the military gets it, understands it, or even knows about it. Surprisingly, but essentially, it's a position that's selected by the chairman. And if you're in the military, I would say compare it to a command master chief or a command sergeant major, a command chief type role, where you're that senior enlisted advisor to the commander, providing that kind of enlisted perspective on everything from the tactical, in this case, all the way to the strategic. For an outside entity, outside the military, I think you have to think about it from maybe a CEO, COO, human resources, CFO, those roles inside of an organization that maybe civilians would be familiar with. It's none of those, but it's a little bit of each of those. From a human resources perspective, understanding people, helping solve problems, looking at recruiting and retention. So there's a human resources perspective to it. If you come from an operational background, then certainly as a COO, the ability to understand operations, to understand what happens inside of the J3 directorate, and being able to provide advice in and around those operations is important. And so there's an aspect of that. And then if you understand what a CEO does, I would guess that in the civilian world, that might be a fairly lonely position at times. And the beauty of the military is it provides this enlisted advisor, wingman, counterpart to assist that CEO as they carry the burden of the entire organization on their shoulders. Now they have a trusted truth teller who will say, hey, the emperor's not wearing any clothes today. We need to talk about this problem, because you don't always get that type of honesty from your staff around you, and you need someone that's not worried about taking your job. You need someone that's not trying to make the next rank. You need somebody that's kind of at the pinnacle of their career that can give you that honest assessment and share with you what's going on, as I'm able to go places the chairman maybe can't, and I can get the truth at the deck plate level out on the ground. Then I can bring back that very different and unique perspective. And so if we go out, somewhere and we visit and execute a troop visit, I mean, the chairman, he'll certainly get some high-level briefings, and he'll get to meet some of the troops, and he'll get a good sort of show of what's going on the surface. But while he's doing that, I'm able to dig in a little deeper with the other senior enlisted leaders that might be there, and I can dig in and bring a fuller picture and a more complete perspective to what's really going on inside of a unit or inside of an organization. And so that's part of my role. They like to say the SEAC has to be able to simultaneously look up and out and down and in. And so I think of that as looking up and out and thinking about the future of our force, working with the service senior enlisted advisors, understanding their challenges inside of each branch of the service, and trying to understand where we're headed as an organization, and then down and in, looking closely at the ongoing challenges that the service members may be dealing with, whether it's most recently, we changed the allowance for shipping pets as an example, right? Service members were having to dole out-of-pocket money, and if you're a young enlisted service member and you've got a couple of big dogs and you gotta ship them somewhere, you might find yourself paying a lot of money out of pocket. And so we worked as a group, the service SEAs, COCOM, senior enlisted leaders, while I was at INDOPACOM, looking for ways to help service members with small things like that would matter, because those matter for retention, they matter for recruitment, and taking care of people is just also part of our charter and what we're supposed to do. Just this last year, we had about a 14.5% pay raise for the E1 to E4 ranks, I believe it was. And so the ability to kind of lobby for those types of changes for our force to affect the lifestyle and the lives of those that are most at need is also part of what I focus on. And then NCO training and development, from EJPME, professional military education, courses like Keystone and Gateway that are focused on joint learning. Those are things that I'm focused on, and I work with National Defense University, the service, Senior Enlisted Advisors, COCOM, CSELs, to try and make sure that we're building the best products and that we're getting the best throughput, and we're developing a joint force that is trained, educated, and ready to be their very best on our nation's worst day. So that's sort of a all-encompassing, I think, what I look at every day. And then, like everybody else, I do whatever else my boss tells me to do. So if he has a special tasker, then I go deal with those other things as well. But I'll tell you, it's an awesome place to be. It's not that different from my very first command Master Chief job, because even then I was focused on people, focused on assisting my commander, focused on thinking about the force of the future and how we're growing and developing, future SEALs and what our force would look like. And so this is just like that, but just on a larger scale.
So I was going to ask that. How does SEAC differ from any of the other past commands in the leadership perspective? But you definitely answered that. So when I talk to people about the enlisted side of the house and really talk about the platoon chief spot, which is that it's really the hinge in the platoon at the SEAL team to ensure that we call the butt shed or the lower enlisted guys get what they need, have what they need to do their job to the highest level, and to ensure that the upper echelon, i.e. senior chiefs, master chiefs, and then all to the officers and warrant officers, know what the enlisted need. And so it's the hinge. That's why the platoon chief is such a special position within the SOF community. Would you say that as the SEAC, you are the hinge between the enlisted of the military and the officer side?
Yeah, there's a little bit of that, but I'll tell you, I'll take it to a different layer, and that is, the chairman's role. Part of his role is to focus on joint integration.
Okay.
And so you have very specific service roles, and so I'll use the MCPON of the Navy. He is certainly that hinge between the naval enlisted force and the officer corps and the CNO. He serves in that pivotal role. I like to think about my role as being at that juncture between not just enlisted and officer, but also more importantly between all the services, because there's not a lot of folks that are looking at that topic of joint integration. And so the chairman and I both, we're always thinking about that topic of, hey, how do we build the best joint integrated force that is prepared to operate in all domains every day against our toughest adversaries. Each service is working on their specific service roles, and so each of those service senior enlisted leaders has their role, and then I'm just sort of there in the middle, I think, trying to pull all that together, pull best practices, lessons learned, and thinking about that future force that has to be a really, truly jointly integrated all-domain capability that is better than anybody else on the planet.
That's great to hear, because when we go overseas, we are not just working in a silo as a SEAL team. We are working with Army, Marine Corps, Air Force, and we work with everybody. And so understanding now there is somebody that's positioned to look at that combination where we do bilateral operations or multi-force movements or any of that. It makes all the sense in the world because that's what we do. We always, the joke about the Green Berets versus the SEALs and how we razz each other on a daily basis, but we love each other and we work together very cohesively. So it's neat to see that at a high level, because I was a petty officer first class. About my highest level as team lead sniper. So big deal. A lot of responsibility.
Yeah, I think, SOF is often referred to as being inherently joint because, as you described it, right, we deployed and we were working with all the other services. And I joke around and tell people I think I flew on more Army helicopters than I rode on Navy ships. And so being inherently joint really, I think, is a key part for me in this role. Having that depth and breadth of joint understanding going back for decades as a SOF operator, that's just been really helpful for me, because now I just automatically defer to thinking about the total joint force, and I'm never service centric. I'm never just thinking about what the Navy's doing. It's always that larger joint picture, and I think that does that reflects that SOF upbringing that I had.
Well, it takes a true leader to step out of their comfortability of what they've earned over their career, because you were a true SOF operator at the highest level. I mean, I've got teammates that we both share that have spoken so highly of you, and they're like, he's an unbelievable human. And to step out of that to go into...
Don't believe anything they say. I paid them to say that.
I can imagine. Best stuff of who they are. So, but to go into... stepping out of the SOF community to go into a higher level to really make sure that the military is functioning on all levels, all branches, that takes a true leader. Not many people can do that. A lot of operators have a hard time when they leave a team doing something else. A lot of officers at the SEAL team have a hard time doing a disassociated tour because they're not part of that brotherhood for that stint. So massive credit to you on being able to bridge that gap and do it with such integrity and honor to get to this level. I want to take it back to BUDS real quick, because BUDS seems to be a focal point for every Navy SEAL, no matter how long you served or how long you've been on this earth. Surviving BUDS training and Hell Week is a legendary, and it's intense in its own right. What was your toughest mental or physical challenge you faced during SEAL training, and how did it prepare you for your later roles?
Yeah. So I had the pleasure of being the LPO for my BUDS class. And as you know, that brought with it extra beatings every day. Every morning when the class OIC and I would go, we get a few extra beatings and some extra attention. And then at the end of the day, your end of the day check-in with the instructor cadre at the class is back at the barracks there. And, you get summoned and you show up, just you and the class OIC, and you get some extra punishment for all the mistakes of the day. So I certainly reflect back on the test that was BUDS, and certainly Hell Week as the biggest part of the test, I think, for all of us, right?
Yeah.
I think one of my biggest takeaways from all of that was learning that it couldn't be only about me, that I really, it was a whole class. And I know that we're, everyone is focused on, for one, making it themselves through it and dragging your best swim buddy, your teammate with you. And so you're focused on your swim buddies, and maybe you're kind of focused on your boat crew. But rarely does anyone in that group have to think about it from the whole class perspective, right? And so I bore that responsibility. And I took it very seriously. I felt like, hey, it's, part of my role was being responsible for that entire class. And having come from the fleet and having been as a E4, having responsibility for people in my workshop around me, I knew what that meant, right? To have to take care of people, and knowing that they had people problems and they had families and they had lives beyond just the service. I think that all sort of came home for me as I thought about my role of being this LPO, that trying to help, a class officer and trying to help as many teammates as I could make it to the finish line. Obviously the physical and mental strain and stress of BUDS and Hell Week is immense. And so no doubt, like just making it through Hell Week and surviving that that ordeal was certainly a task, and that was massive. But I will tell you that the weight that I felt of the heavy burden of trying to be a leader at that point, as it was a lot, to take on top of just trying to make it through buds. And so I reflect back to some of those lessons, I think, of, taking care of people. In SOF, our number one ethos is humans are more important than hardware. And man, that applied every day from the very beginning of my SEAL career until today. None of that has changed. I still live by that every day. Man, you got to take care of people, humans, more important than hardware.
Amen. It's funny you say that I remember the OIC and the LPO coming back after our training day to put out word for the evening for the next morning muster. And they didn't look as well when they were returning to us as they did previously going. And you don't really think about it. And when you're going through as a student in any training environment, if you're in a student, you're just trying to survive and make it. But to tack on that leadership perspective and have to manage all that extra, I won't be complaining again. I can tell you that. It's pretty awesome.
It was great, though. I'll tell you, I mean, that experience, and again, going back to my time in the Fleet Navy, where I had to be sort of a work center supervisor, and if the LPO wasn't there, sometimes I would be stepping in. And so just early on, learning this idea of knowing where your people are, taking care of your people, being responsible for others, having to serve something a little bit bigger than yourself, if it's a small work center or if it's your whole buds class. All those things, I think, prepared me for the next level of leadership that I would face time and again, from my first role as a team leader, as an E7, to being a command master chief, and now into this role. Those were all really valuable lessons that they sort of helped develop the way that I think and the way that I lead.
Well, let's get into that then. So obviously there's so much stuff we can go on here, but let's see, you've earned 4 Bronze Stars, 2 with Valor, and a Presidential Unit Citation. Was there a specific mission or moment behind one of those awards that you're particularly proud of, and why?
I don't know if it's tied to the awards or not, but I would say I would just reflect on a moment in my career writ large that I think was incredibly impactful and that I'm most proud of, and not necessarily from a personal sense, but pride in our joint force. And I didn't really, again, SOF being inherently joint, I recognized that, I understood it, but I got to see it on full display during the rescue of Jessica Lynch. Man, the entire joint force went into action to make that happen. And to see the level of effort that was mobilized for everything from the initial intel gathering to the reconnaissance efforts, to the planning, mission planning, to integrating all the different key players that would act during that event. Not just the assault force, not my small group that went into the actual hospital to rescue Jessica Lynch, but the Rangers that were in the blocking positions or that worked on clearing the outside areas of the hospital, to Marines beyond that, to the air assets overhead, Air Force. I mean, you name the service and the entity that played a key role in that thing, and the ability for that joint force to be integrated and to operate in a joint manner was just something to behold. I mean, it was amazing. And I was so proud of our military, of our joint force, and frankly, of the United States of America for being willing to put that kind of effort and that kind of investment, human investment, equipment investment, all the things that we rolled out that day and that night to save a fellow service member. It was just a really proud moment. I just reflect on that all the time, and I think about how awesome it was. And I would like to think that every service member should know that that's how valuable they are to the United States of America, that we would go to that length to rescue you if you were ever separated from your unit.
There's no question about it. I'll tell you, I have a story that attaches to what you just said, because when you guys were doing that, I was in SEAL training, and the instructor staff's demeanor changed. They sat us down on the sand berm. We were about to go get hammered because, of course, we do everything right. And we were about to get hammered, and they just sat us down, and the demeanor shifted, and they said, "This is what just happened." And it immediately made me feel like, wow, this is so much bigger than I even could have possibly thought about. Like, they just did that, and I'm now trying to go to do something like that. And so by default, what you guys did for us recruits going into SEAL training and external and paving the way for us to want to carry that forward, it was a huge deal for me personally. Just a massive success. And I actually got to talk to Jessica Lynch a couple of years ago, and it's just amazing, you know, because of what you did. I get to talk to her, people get to talk to her, and she gets to live her life. So
that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And I didn't know that you were in Bud's training when that was going on, or that the instructor staff took that moment to do that. That's pretty cool.
Oh, the wave effect from what you guys did was massive, bigger than I'm sure you guys at the time could understand. But I also know from being on a team's perspective that when you do something cool, it feels pretty good too. So that's awesome. It's amazing. Yeah. Wow. Well, your role, I've watched you on LinkedIn for a couple of years now, and I've just I can't keep track of all the commands that you were in leadership at. You just kept moving. But your role involves a ton of travel. So things that you do, engage with service members and their families. Can you share a recent interaction that reminded you of the importance of your work as SEAC?
Yeah, I'm going to actually go, because I'm still pretty new in the job, so I've not had as many interactions here as I did just recently as INDOPACOM. So I'll just go back to something that happened during my time there.
Sure.
And it reinforced something that I already knew, but it was a great reminder that you're never alone, and that there are always people who can help you. And this joint team is way more awesome than you realize, and someone's always going to be there to pick you up and help you. And so I was visiting MRF-D, which is the Marine Rotational Force Darwin out in Australia. Bunch of young Marines, awesome, but just like young SEALs, you know, they like to have a beer and party and hang out, you know, work hard, play hard.
Yeah.
And so you run into some young service members that don't know how to manage their alcohol. And so you end up with young service members that sometimes need help with that. Sometimes they need a little counseling from their military leaders, as well as maybe some additional counseling, maybe some things like Alcoholics Anonymous and things to help them manage some of that. Well, when you're on a rotational force that's rotating in and out of a place, you may not have all those assets and those things that can help you with a problem like that. And if you're in a foreign country, then you may not have, like we do in the U.S., you may not know what assets lie out there in the civilian sector that might be able to help you. And so I'm visiting MRF-D, and I hear about a young Marine that, you know, they had a concern about. And I said, well, look, I don't know how to help you with that, but I know somebody that does. And I happen to be close friends with the Australian SEAC at the time. And I said, hey, buddy, let me describe this to you, and you tell me, is there a solution? And I told him the whole story, and he said, oh yeah, I can help you out with that, mate. Let me call a couple of friends. And he reaches out, and pretty soon they've connected somebody, and they found a way to get them into some help that they needed. So everywhere I go, I try to remember that you know, if there's family members in need in a foreign country, if there's a teammate that's now out and is a veteran and is struggling with anything, you name the scenario, if you're just willing to take a moment and hear them out, learn about what they're going through, there's probably a resource and a friend or a teammate, or taking it even larger, an ally or partner teammate out there that's totally willing to help, that would bend over backwards and gladly help a teammate and say, I got you. I got you. I'm going to take care of you today. And so now, anytime going forward in this job, especially if I think that I'm in a place and someone has a problem and they need some help, you know, I'm going to be on the phone with my nearest teammates in whatever country I'm in and say, hey, can you help me with this? Because there's just great teammates, great people in our organizations and around them that are right there ready to help. Sometimes you got to be willing to ask for that help.
That's a big thing. That's one of those things that I think a lot of us had a hard time asking for help initially. And now it's become a thing where it's like, oh, the faster I ask for help, the faster I can get back into fighting shape. And then I can move forward with my career and do what I'm supposed to do. And right now in the Navy, in the U.S., there's over 40,000 veteran first responder charities out there. So there's always a resource, always a need. And it's interesting when you get out of the service, you see how big this net is of the military community. We are friends with the Brits and we're friends with the Aussies, and it just keeps going deeper and deeper and deeper. You get into the country, you meet a guy. Oh, you serve, I serve. Cool. Let me get you a beer. I'm good. Oh, okay, cool. Do you need anything? It's amazing how that net is cast so wide.
Yeah.
To be able to offer those resources to active and veteran it's crucial to the success of their survival and just continued growth as humans.
Well, and the partner nations, many of them are faced with some of the exact same problems that we have. And so some of my closest friends at the SEAC level are the Five Eye partners, and they talk about their recruiting challenges, their retention challenges, the exact same list of problems that we deal with. And so it's great to talk to them because they often have some creative solutions and some ideas that maybe we haven't thought of here. And so we're consistently talking to each other. We at conferences and other locations talking about these same problems and trying to find ways to help each other and share those lessons learned. So it's a phenomenal network that's out there. And then on the veteran side, yeah, you're right. There's so many great organizations out there. And sometimes, we just got to let go of our pride and be willing to ask for a little help and say, hey, I got a little problem here. Can I get a little help? And there's always a good teammate out there that's ready to scoop you up and give you a hand.
Always. Well, the military has seen significant leadership changes since President Trump's inauguration in 2025. How do you ensure the enlisted perspective remains a priority amid these shifts?
Yeah, so our military is incredibly apolitical, and so regardless of what political leadership changes look like, whether it's the chairman and me, or whether it's in my last job with Admiral Paparo or Admiral Aquilino before that, or General Josh Rudd, I just focus on keeping the main thing, right?
Yeah.
We gotta build quality people. We got to make sure that our military force is lethal and well-trained and prepared and exercised and always ready to be their very best when our nation faces its worst day. Keep the main thing, and everything else sorts itself out. So I don't do things that differently now than I've done under any previous administration. I just look really hard at taking care of our people, trying to make sure they've got what they need to be the best they can be, so that we're always ready, and making sure our adversaries know that they don't want to mess with the United States of America.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I served under two different presidents, Bush and Obama at the time, and you'd see a different picture on the wall for leadership for the commander in chief. But really, we were taking direction from guys like you. So nothing really changed for our whole scenario. It was always, can we get more guns? Can we get more guns? Can we get sexier guns? Can we get more ammo? Which we just go through so much ammo. So I can completely imagine. But again, a lot of guys who serve in the community, in our community, in the military, not everybody goes a full career. And so we don't quite understand what the leadership tasks are that you face every day. And so I'd love to talk about some of the significant, leadership things that you've had to deal with over the years and how you tackle them. What would be some of your most memorable ones or hardest decision points that you had to tackle since being a master chief and in a leadership role?
Yeah, I mean, I think most often it's been people, right?
Okay.
You end up with service members with unique human challenges in relationships, in their finances, in mistakes that they make, and as you know, one of the key in the Navy and in the SEAL teams as well, one of the key components of sort of the NJP process would be a DRB, where you have a senior panel of enlisted leaders that will sort of explore whatever incident occurred, whatever challenges that the service member is facing, what they're potentially going to be disciplined for, and trying to pull the string on things and just make sure that you get all the facts on the table so that the commander can make a good decision based on what he's looking at there, because oftentimes there's more to the story than meets the eye. And again, you're looking out for your people. You're trying to make sure that that they are getting treated fairly, trying to make sure that they're getting the things they need, and that they're learning lessons in some of those hard moments when they've made some mistakes as well, so that they learn from they learn those hard lessons and they go on to become great leaders. I think dealing with people problems was the most time consuming, and yet one of the most important aspects of my job in any of the command tours that I did. People.
You know, it's funny that you had mentioned previously about the difference between, or similar, CEO and COO to SEAC and some of the other positions, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, because I have an uncle who was a CEO of a big, very, very large company. And I asked him particularly, I said, you know, how do you, I think he had 40,000 people under management. And I said, how do you deal with that? And he says, I spend 90% of my time dealing with people. And it's very interesting. It's similar. It's the same thing across the board.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a book that talks about that, and I forget who it was, but they talk about getting the right people on the bus is one of the most important aspects of leadership, because once you get all the right people on the bus, then everything goes smoother because you're not spending so much time. And so the key lesson there is to try to recruit and retain all your right people, because then you'll probably spend less time dealing with some of those human problems. Although it is human nature, you know, we're going to make mistakes and there's going to be problems. I think as leaders, you gotta always focus on the people, and when they have problems, you got to help them sort those things out as best as you can, and get them moving in the right direction so they can be the most effective teammate, employee, service member that they can be.
Well, you mentioned book and this statement here, and I'm a big reader, but I read primarily autobiographies and history books, and I know that's just such a strange difference between the two. Very selective with my autobiographies, by the way. But what would be a book, resource, or practice that's been invaluable to your growth as a leader, and why would you recommend it to our audience?
Yeah, I read a lot as well, and across the spectrum of fiction and nonfiction. And I think one of my favorite all time, and it's not new, it's been around a while, you may have read it, it's called Legacy by James Carr.
I've heard it. I have not read it.
So it's about the New Zealand national rugby team. The All Blacks is their name. And it's really a book about culture. It's about people and it's about culture, and it explores why they're one of the winningest teams in the history of sports, and it dives into the culture that they build into their system and the role that veteran players, more senior players play, their role in comparison to new rookies coming onto the team. It explores the idea of leaving the jersey better than you find it, of instilling these key principles that have led to them becoming such an ultra successful sports team. I recommend it to everyone. I usually have several copies in my office and hand them out, because I think if you get the culture right and you get the right people on the bus and you build that type of culture where folks are focused on doing something bigger than themselves, making the team better than it's ever been, leaving the jersey better than they found it. When you build those types of sort of key attributes into your organizational culture, you're going to win. You're going to win with that. And so I love Legacy. I'd recommend that one to everyone.
Well, check that out. A big shout out to Legacy. I'm sure those gentlemen who wrote the book are going to be super happy with that. Well, I want to bring this home and a few more questions from the Brotherhood, and because I know your time is super valuable. But if you could sit down with your younger self, fresh out of BUD/S training, what advice would you give yourself, knowing what you know now as the SEAC?
Yeah, I think number one, knowing what I was like as a young man, I would probably say, hey, don't be an idiot. That's advice number one. Wake up and try to get a little smarter every day. More importantly, I would say take the blinders off and start to learn the bigger picture about the organization, about the why, about how you fit. You may seem like a small cog in this giant system of cogs and gears. You need to understand the core reason that you're there, what your role is, the importance of it, how it works, and the bigger picture of how it all functions. So take the time to learn the bigger picture, because that'll really help inspire your why. I think we're challenged with that at times in today's military. We don't have leaders that are always helping our newest service members understand their purpose and understand their why. And so I think if I'm talking to my younger self, I'd say, hey, go understand your why, understand your role, your responsibilities, but look outward and understand how it ties into the bigger picture of that organization and that bigger mission, all the way up to at the national level, right? Trying to understand what your small unit does and why it's so critical. And I think that helps solve a lot of internal struggles that not just young service members, but youth across America. I think they're looking for purpose, and they're looking for their why. And I think that would help get after that a little bit. And then I guess the last thing I would tell my younger self is, hey, understand the importance of taking care of your people. Like go back to the humans being more important than hardware, and just focus on taking care of your people every day.
The why thing is so incredible. And I'll take it back to, so I joined right out of high school, 9/11 kind of did. And the same thing is, I always say, it's amazing. People give me some kind of credit for joining during 9/11. And I'm like, you don't understand how many people were at the recruiting offices on 9/11. Like it shows the spirit of America. So, but then getting into SEAL training and then Hell Week, I remember I told myself, because everybody has their own why for why they're there to begin with. And then the why probably changes over time because they actually start to understand, SEAL training and being a Navy SEAL are two totally different things. And so when going through Hell Week, I remember approaching Wednesday before everything started to fall apart, and I was seeing trains in the water and things just like completely were going delirious. And I said, I just want to call my dad and my mom and tell them that I made it, and that, they don't have to worry about me anymore because I've got it. I'm gonna move my life forward. And I remember getting to Friday, and we were doing this long walk back, and we get to right in front of the compound at SEAL training, and they see interlock arms, make us face the ocean. We're gonna get surf tortured. You're 5.5 days into it, have no clue what time it is and what day it is at this point, and you're just like, okay, you're down to a small group of fellas from the huge class, and you're operating on any kind of reserves that you have. And as you're moving forward, it's 1 step forward, 2 steps forward, 1 step forward, and then about face. And they had us turn around, and there was nobody there, but just an American flag stuck in the ground floating. And you talk about why. It's like we go through this torture, not torture, but it's physical fitness torture. And it's Hell Week. And you go through this hard Hell Week. And that's what they show you. They don't give you a giant trophy, giant medals, a big celebration. They stick a flag in the ground and floating because that's our why. And I was like, got it. You got me. You got all of me. I'm in. I'm in. So that why is so crucial.
Yeah. Yeah. I think everybody has some of those aha moments at different points, even during BUDS or during Hell Week and sometimes later in life. But yeah, man, helping our youth understand their why and how important they are to the future of our force and the future of our nation is pretty critical. And it's one thing I talk, not just to still active duty folks, but folks like you're out here doing a podcast, and for the youth that might be listening to this, you have a really influential role and an opportunity to have outsized effects on our nation by helping develop our youth and to help them grow and understand their why and help them become, better citizens and to seek something greater than themselves and serve something big and to do something amazing in their life. Like that's pretty awesome that you're out here doing this with a podcast.
It's worth it. We need more good qualified people in the military. We need more. We always need more qualified people for the military who are hungry to want to serve our nation. And it is our responsibility as veterans to ensure that we're telling this story and this messaging to these younger guys. I mean, cats, they call me all the time. Hey, I want to be a Green Beret. Cool. I'll get you in touch with the Green Beret because I was a SEAL. I don't know exactly how they operate, so I want to make sure. But just being able to pass that forward. And it really turned on for me to be that mentor when I had children. Now I get it. Now I can truly understand like the shaping, and, you know, this is not silly. This is real stuff now. And so your words have super meaning. So with that being said, what is one mission that you hope our listeners take away from your journey from the North Carolina surfer to the military's top enlisted leader?
Yeah, I think one, if I had one most important message, it would be that one, you're all capable of way more than you realize. And this is what we learned. We've had this shared experience by going through BUDS and going through Hell Week and being tested. You're way more capable of doing anything amazing than you ever realized. You just gotta trust in your abilities, know that you're much more capable than you realize, and be willing to take a little risk and go out there and try it. Our nation needs not just military, but across all sectors of our society. We need people that are willing to serve, people that are willing to pursue something bigger than themselves, people that are willing to try something really hard, and get out there and excel and do great things for our nation, whether it's in the military, in law enforcement, in an interagency, you name the place or the thing or the way that you can serve our nation. There are so many options out there, and our nation needs that. And so I would say, know that you're capable, know that you can do awesome stuff. You're way tougher than you realize, and you just got to be able to just go for it. Get out there and go for it, and you can accomplish anything.
That's great advice. I'll go back 20 years going into BUDS, and I'll take that. That'll help me out massively. Oh, we'll close on this, which is the one that seems to stop everybody in their tracks. Who is your hero and why?
Oh man, that's an easy one, because I got to see him recently when I was first coming into this job, and they did a promotion ceremony, and then we did a change of responsibility ceremony with the previous SEAC. And my dad, who's 92, came all the way from the mountains of North Carolina. My brother and my sister-in-law, they drove my dad and his wife all the way down. And man, that was so awesome having him here, knowing that he was a Korean War veteran and he spent his life serving, and to have him come to the Pentagon for that event and actually pin on an anchor. He's my hero. He's my hero. He's why I'm here today. He's why I serve today. He was that influence, tough as nails, much like the greatest generation, right? The experiences they had, you know, someone born in the 1920s and 1930s and living through Great Depression, post-Great Depression, and through multiple conflicts and into all the things that they saw, from the development of cell phones to a man on the moon. What a crazy, life when you think about it, all that they have seen. But yeah, watching him serve the state of North Carolina, watching his toughness, his example as a dad, as a servant in the community and the church, his example every day was such a big influence. So no doubt, and I'm sure like many young men would say the same thing, that my dad was my hero.
That's super powerful, brother. Yeah. What's your father's name?
Bill Isom.
Bill Isom. All right. Well, honoring Bill Isom, Korean War veteran, and to you, my brother, the SEAC, Navy SEAL, has done an unbelievable job in the military. And obviously it shouldn't mean anything coming from me and E6, but we look up to you. Everybody that has served that I know looks up to you. And we're all so excited to see you in this position and to continue on the service to help our military grow and expand and become the better version of themselves. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining us, and all the God's blessings to you in your career.
Yeah, thanks to you again. Truly honored to get to be here on your show like this. It's awesome. And I'll just tell you, I wake up every day with a heart full of gratitude and gratefulness, and just really honored to get the chance to continue serving, and look forward to seeing you hopefully here in the Pentagon for a visit someday.
I'm in. I have never been. And just so I'm throwing this one, he doesn't know this yet, but I'm saying this is part 1 of 2, because this show is designed specifically for post-service special operators. So the part 2 will be when he exits his incredible career. We're going to find out what he's going to do post-service. So there you have it.
All right. Awesome. I'll take you up on that.
Frogman Friday. Long live the Brotherhood.
Yeah, boy.